first and foremost of interest to everybody on this panel is the hearing to confirm one of our faves, Neera Tanden, to head the Office of Management, Budget and Management. Thoughts? Did we watch?
I caught some of this, and the thing that struck me, first and foremost, is that Neera Tanden has never been qualified for any job she's ever had in her entire life. This is not. I'm sorry, she's not like an intelligent, well-spoken woman, a person, I should say, who should be like leading, big liberal organization, progressive organization. She is not someone who belongs in the White House. She does not seem like someone that's qualified to me to be having all the power that she has, even aside from everything we already know about her and how she has actually run what she has run. Like would you, if you gave Neera Tanden a job interview and that was her performance, would you hire her for anything in the world? Would you hire her to produce your podcast or something? Would you trust this person to edit your podcast and not get you in trouble?
She's no Pete Buttigieg. I agree with you.
No, I think, Leslie, I'm not saying she's the most qualified person in the room. I'm saying that as president, Biden will. I'm still working on it. Her pronunciation is so annoying. I actually think that she's very on brand. I mean, I think she's so on brand, especially actually for the budget. Although, as you were saying, she really has no even plausible qualification for that appointment, except she did have some very creative ideas about how to pay for things, including making countries like Libya pay for getting themselves invaded and overthrown by having their oil taken from them. So that, of course, we know from WikiLeaks, where she actually recommended doing that. And also she did tell Hillary Clinton, or she told, Podesta, that the Hillary people didn't have to sweat it about the fight for 15. So when it comes to budgets, she's, as much of an austerity fan as she is privately, I guess, as she is publicly, where we've seen her on TV, getting excited about putting entitlements on the table. And then we've seen her behind the scenes, either trying to exploit, post-invasion exploit countries like Libya, and also not give black and brown and women people a minimum wage increase that they obviously deserve.
So, Katie, let's back this up a little bit. For people who might not have heard our episode last fall where we spoke with Matt Brunig about his extensive history with Neera Tanden, and for people who aren't chronically online and don't have firsthand experience with who she is as a person, who wants to take a crack at just giving some basic background to the uninitiated of who Neera Tanden is?
Well, she did grow up. I'm saying this for real. She grew up on Section 8 housing, which is something that she invokes a lot. And there's
Katie, big picture.
Oh, big picture. She was
literally who is Neera Tanden?
She was a Clinton. She was a Clinton ally, Clinton aide, and then she became the director of the Center for American Progress, which is the biggest liberal think tank in the United States. Also, during her career, she has lied many times and punched a subordinate in the chest, who would go on to become the campaign manager for Senator Bernard Sanders.
Okay, so this is a person who has for a long time been at the head of what is publicly perceived to be a leading liberal think tank. Now, the left thinks of liberal in one way, and Democrats more broadly think of the word liberal in another way, but it's perceived to be a progressive think tank by the DC big brain crew. And Faz Shakir, who went on to become Bernie Sanders' campaign manager, very famously used to work at Think Progress, which was its media arm. And they had a very public disagreement that resulted in him being assaulted by Neera Tanden. That's something that she has admitted to, and which I think a lot of people in the Bernie camp are still pretty steamy about.
She said it was a shove. That's how. She doesn't even deny it.
She says it's a shove.
She challenges the nomenclature, though. But it's not. It happened. It's just whether. Yeah.
She said it wasn't punch. She said.
I think it wasn't a punch. It was a shove or something.
Yeah, that's exactly what she said.
Yeah, which is just. I mean, that's like, okay. So you shove your wife. You don't. You don't punch her. Yeah.
she's overqualified, isn't she? Because she represents pretty much everything that the contemporary Democratic Party. She checks every single box, right? She's a product of the American meritocracy because she's a Yale Law School grad who is also
I didn't realize that.
Doesn't know anything. So that combination. She's a staunch supporter of Israel. She showed that she was willing, as the head of the Center for American Progress, to serve the interests of all of the organization's donors. She was an attack dog against
Nathan,
Bernie
really?
Sanders.
Really?
Right out the gate.
I'm gonna throw a piece of matzah. You gotta have a piece of matzah that you throw up, like graphic of a matzah or hamantaschen hitting me in the head.
Shit. I did it. Okay. All right. That's one.
That's one. You
one
get
strike.
3.
Yeah, you get three hamantaschen before you're.
But she's got everything. I mean, it's not shocking. I mean, it's a little shocking because she's just so completely. I'm trying to use an adjective to describe her Twitter behavior that is
Trumpian?
Cool.
That isn't gendered.
Well, yeah, she's a little unhinged on Twitter.
It is unhinged.
So you might think that would count against her, but she's been so good at serving the interests of the Democratic Party that how could she not be rewarded with a position? And of course, as you say, she's also willing to push the party to further U.S. empire. She's great. She's ideal for the Biden administration.
Yeah, and it's worth noting that, she does come out of Hillary Clinton's office when she was First Lady. And CAP, which was founded by, I believe, John Podesta and other, ex-Clinton people, was essentially founded to be a giant parking garage for people who would end up staffing the Hillary Clinton administration after she won in 2008. Didn't really work out that way, but she ended up with something for her years of loyal service to the Democratic Party, which is a nomination to be the government's accountant.
We said this, I think, on my show, Bree. You and I and Walker Bragman, we were watching, and watching her give some C-SPAN interview where she was talking about how, everything was on the table, including entitlements. But what was amazing while we were watching that is that it struck us that, she's not unique in her politics. I mean, she has awful, Clintonian, neoliberal politics. What really makes Biden's decision so offensive is that there are people with her terrible politics who aren't famous for being offensive, insulting, vitriolic, and smearing people online. They could have been more strategic about it and just appointed a terrible person who the left didn't hate because the left didn't know about, right? She's particularly online. So that to me was just a sign of I don't know, either Biden is trolling, or he probably doesn't know who she is anyway, or no. So whatever.
He doesn't even know he's nominated her.
Yeah. So his staff is trolling, I guess, but it's so disgusting. I mean, it's obviously on the policies it's terrible, but it's also just a superficial sign of how little he could care. He doesn't even pretend to care.
Well, so to that point, Katie, one of the comments, one of the lines of questioning that kept coming up today was the quote mean tweets. And what I found to be so remarkable was that the mean tweets were characterized as kind of superficial and why would anybody really care? And Cory Booker is quoting Langston Hughes talking about what a wonderful woman she is and life ain't no crystal stair. She's come up from nothing. This during Black History Month, I would like to point out, to rehabilitate Neera Tanden at the same time that, of course, we all are old enough to remember that the tweets of completely unaffiliated Bernie supporters were enough to make him unqualified to be president of the United States.
Right. Yeah. Well, and she also, in terms of that, coming up the staircase, she kicked down the staircase right when she got up. That's the thing. She absolutely, she constantly invokes her lived experience of growing up on Section 8 housing, which I think is a very admirable thing to do. If you grow up on Section 8 housing and then you become someone who advocates for others so that they can also grow up on those very important benefits, and you want to maintain them as opposed to slash them, that's all great. If you do what she does, which is actually kind of the worst of all possibilities, because you have people who are Republicans who make it out of poverty and then they just want everyone else to take care of themselves, and they use their lived experience as proof that you don't need any help or any handouts, because if you want it bad enough and if you're left to your own resources, you can do it. Look at me. So that's one thing. But what Neera, but that's an offensive political moral view of the world to the left, right? But what Neera does is actually really really terrible, because what she does is she doesn't accept that overt kind of cutthroat view of the world. She perpetuates the meritocracy. But what she's doing is she's actually saying, look, I like these programs. Trust me. I know. I lived on them. They're so important. I'm the last person who would ever want to cut them. But unfortunately, we have to have them cut because, and look, it's the last thing I want to do. I didn't come from wealth. I've struggled. So trust me when I say we have to cut these things. And that is like that's just like neoliberalism, woke neoliberalism in a nutshell.
Yeah.
I think we on the left should be a little careful not to overemphasize the degree to which Neera's rude, horrible tweets are the problem with her.
Right.
Right. Yes, it's true that selecting her is a particular slap in the face, but it is true that the politics are the worst part of what she does. And at the Center for American Progress, for example, they funneled money to the American Enterprise Institute, the right-wing American Enterprise Institute, for a joint project on how to stop populism. Populism of right and left, right? So she's a bigger friend to the American Enterprise Institute than to the populist left. She made that very clear. She censored critics of Israel within the organization, right? And these are, I mean, so we should focus on the absolute substance of her terrible politics. And in that way, she isn't actually that much worse. She's just so much more egregiously so publicly. And I almost like it because she's such a loathsome ambassador for Bidenism.
Also that she just has this unrestrained willingness to do whatever it takes. I think it's the kind of like guilelessness that puts her on the next level. There's some quote from her mother that's like, she says like, Neera will do whatever it takes to make the Clintons happy. Like I don't want to misattribute that, but like
she got mad at the Times for actually asking her mother a question.
Yeah,
below the belt. Way to give agency to your mom, Neera. I think you're totally right. It's the policy and it's the politics and the decisions. I think that this is just like a sign on a superficial level of just, again, like I said, of how disrespectful Biden is. Like he doesn't even feel the need to pander on any level to the left or whoever's decisions for him, right? But I do think there's another reason that's important, which is that she is part of this narrative that was perpetuated by not just online, but by media elites and political elites, and we all know where I'm going with this, of the Bernie bro. And that argument was that every single abusive, quote unquote, harassing tweet online from anyone who was either alleging to be or someone could say was a supporter of Sanders was evidence of this fabricated narrative about the Bernie bro problem of the sexism, misogyny, racism, transphobia, ableism, and homophobia endemic among Bernie Sanders supporters. And yet she signal boosted, is friends with, hangs out with them in real life, wishes happy birthday to, calls them friends. But again, we have photos also with people who are absolutely bigoted, online harassing, abusive, toxic trolls. And then people are like, well, why does that matter? It's like, the reason it matters is because we have to look at the Bernie bro narrative because it's a very important example of how identity politics are weaponized to actually shut down the person or the people who have good policy ideas and are fighting for the least, the most marginalized, and to woke wash, if you will, terrible policies, right, that come from people who pretend to be allies or advocates. And that really is an important thing because we see it all the time. And if you want to know another example of that, see Hillary Clinton is breaking up the bank's going to end racism? Right. No, which is like that. Yeah. That right. In a nutshell, yeah.
When we talk about the posts, we're not just talking about the Looney Tunes Russia conspiracy stuff that she talks about or the weird attacks on Republicans. We're talking about someone who is one of the most influential and visible hatchet men. One of the most disingenuous enforcers against Bernie Sanders and his supporters. I will venture a guess and say everyone here has been personally condemned by Neera Tanden.
Yes. I've been blocked for a while.
Yeah, raise your hand.
I was blocked. But I don't mean to brag, but she came up with a nickname for me. I think I told you this the other day.
Oh, what is it?
Dalton Socialists, because I went to this fancy private school, and it's like one of these, oh, you're a class traitor, we can't take you seriously. I guess... To be fair, she's what? What's the opposite of a Dalton Socialist? She's a something capital? I don't know, but
she went to Yale Law, so I don't think you get to claim especially high ground at that point.
Yeah.
what's also been frustrating is that there's been a class of people who have tried to use the fact that Trump is also bad. Trump is bad. Trump has bad tweets as a justification for why we should ignore Neera's tweets, including the governor of Vermont, who tweeted, "What an amazingly predictable hypocrisy to watch the GOP express grave concern over some old tweets by Neera Tanden, but is fine with the false inflammatory tweets and words by the former president, which incited a deadly erection." Sorry, I did
You did a Schumer.
But I promise you, everyone, you can be mad at both. It's a beautiful position we have on the left where we are able to be actually consistent on matters like this. Trump can be bad, and Neera Tanden's terrible tweets can also be bad. I also don't want us to gloss over the outing of a sexual assault victim at CAP, which I think was one of the more morally corrupt, morally grievous things that she did as a tenure in her tenure, because she is somebody's boss. As somebody's boss, she did that. She assaulted Faz Shakir. Like, she's in a supervisory capacity here, and I think that it's a lot more important to focus on those kinds of things as well as policy, not just the tweets. Before we move on, I think we should, but there's some highlights from today. Did anybody catch? Yeah, go ahead, Virgil.
We do have some clips put together by producer Ben of the Neera Tanden confirmation hearings.
Oh,
There's been 2 days.
So painful.
2 days of these hearings so far, and the thing about Neera we've been talking about is so much of the great stuff is in posts. It's not in clips. It's not good for a podcast, but finally we've got some great Neera clips. Let's go to the first one if we could.
I want to ask you about a report from the New York Times and other outlets suggesting that you solicited tens of millions of dollars in donations from Wall Street and Silicon Valley companies as president of the Center for American Progress, including very large contributions from Mark Zuckerberg. Millions of dollars from Wall Street financiers, big banks, foreign governments, Silicon Valley, $1 million from the managing partner at Bain Capital, $2.5 million from the UAE. That was between 2016 and 2018. Given this record, how can you assure us that you'll work to see that these Silicon Valley and Wall Street firms don't exercise undue influence, frankly, influence that they've already got in the making of government policy and the control of our economy?
That's Neera Tanden's role as president of CAP. She's a fundraiser. That's what CAP exists to do. That's what think tanks generally exist to do. They're conduits for powerful interests to, basically it's lobbying by another name.
Yeah, this is what her mother said about her. I did pull up the exact quote, and she said her daughter was loyal to Clinton because Hillary is the one who made her. That's a quote from her mother.
So great.
Says Hillary is the one who made her. And she noted that her daughter was a killer fundraiser, inclined to show up, quote, at rich people's places because she needs funds from them. That's like the major problem with Neera Tanden, because even if you peel back all these layers between the mean tweets, between being annoying online, between talking like this, it's really, the point is, like, the only good thing about her is that she knows how to beg rich people for money. And that's her only function in life.
She's a Pelosian.
And a person like that should not be in government. I'm sorry.
That's why Pelosi's in the role she's in, though, right?
Yeah. Yeah, plus one of the best fundraisers in the House. That's how she ended up as Speaker.
As a Jew, I just want to give both of those people a shout out. It means a lot when other people are good at that, because that's something we could use a lot of, if we could share that load and that burden, so we don't look like the only people good at that. So I consider Neera and Pelosi to be allies.
We didn't include her response to that, but both Bernie Sanders and Josh Hawley had a very similar line of questioning there. And when Bernie went on to ask, after listing a bunch of banks that, CAP had taken money from, et cetera, will that affect your decision making? She just replies, "It will have zero impact on my decision making." And we're all supposed to accept that.
Like,
how long are we going to let these people get away with, "Oh no, corruption? Never heard of her."
Nope.
What if she had said yes? I feel like it would have been like, all right, well, she's not Trump.
I just want to say, I do think if Neera were confirmed as the OMB director, I don't think she would be in that role for more than 3 or so years before the next election rolls around, and her services are needed as a fundraiser, as a bundler.
One thing that's a little concerning is that she can't possibly be competent as the director of the Office of Management and Budget. So, I mean, as you mentioned, like her ability to manage employees is demonstrably poor. I want the Biden administration to be competent because I don't want them to lose in 2022 and 2024, and it's a very bad sign when you're appointing functionaries and loyalists like Neera Tanden instead of people who seem like they might actually know what they're doing.
Yeah, well, other people were saying that they found her to be not competent seeming. And I want Leslie to say specifically, why you thought that was. But in the course of watching the testimony today, there were several moments at which she seemed not to really know what she was talking about. Like there was a conversation about clean energy, nuclear energy or something like that. And she first said, yes, I'm very studied on this subject. And then there was a follow-up question and she appeared not to know anything about that subject. There was a question about what she thought was an appropriate tax rate, like maximum tax rate. And she didn't know what Biden's agenda was. And some other senator had to whisper it to her from across the room. Kind of basic knowledge that you would expect to have internalized coming into a hearing like that, if you didn't expect it to be just a pro forma experience, at least.
Yeah, but Bree, can't you confirm that that's an Ivy League law education where you learn to be really, really super confident? Your talking points and your one fact about the tax system, but you also know how to evade any follow-up questions that would check if you had real knowledge?
100%. Here's my crib sheet from my Rising appearance this morning.
We are waiting. Katie just dropped off, but while we wait for her, why don't we go to the next clip?
Okay, what should the individual rate be?
Depends on the income of the individual.
If somebody makes $10 million,
I believe we should restore it back to 39.6.
is that enough?
On the income, yes, there are other ways.
So is that at 39.6 is fair in your belief?
If I have the privilege of being confirmed, my role is to address the president's priorities. And the president's priorities has been to restore it to a 39.6% rate.
Okay, so that's fair.
Someone jumps in and is like, pss, 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 it's lower. And then another senator jumps in and says, don't let him whisper. There was, according to Grassley or whoever it was that whispered it. So there was a lot of confusion after that. And she just clearly didn't know. I mean, she didn't know. And she could have just said, I don't know, but whatever Joe Biden's stated priorities are, it's my job to enforce them.
That clip is so bizarre because it's we're knocking her for not knowing the correct answer. It's what does she believe? He was asking her, he wasn't asking her what the answer of the Biden administration is. He was asking her, what does she actually believe would be fair? Does she not? Why doesn't she have an answer to that basic question that you might ask somebody who's going to be in charge of the budget?
Just to defend Neera a little bit on that point, I think every nominee is told. I mean, all the Supreme Court nominees from either party are all like this. Never answer a straight question. You just learn to say, I don't know anything. I just do my job. I'm just here I have no opinions or politics myself.
Yeah, none of them should be in politics either. None of them should be in government either. I hate them all.
Right. Yes, that's true.
She has no ideological response to it. One, because it's clear that she's never really thought of it. But I think another thing that's happening here is that Graham is kind of presuming that her personal position is going to be more progressive than Joe Biden's position because, I don't know, Center for American Progress almost has the word progressive in it or something. And it felt almost as though he was thinking it was a gotcha, she's going to have some bleeding heart response to this. And she's stuck between a rock and a hard place. The hard place being Joe Biden's austerity. And she's really a secret socialist. But low key, I'm sure she would happily lowball whatever Joe Biden has said.
Illusion she has beliefs.
I wonder if that speaks to the fact that he's so conservative. Does that speak to Biden being such a centrist, or does it speak to, and it could be a combo, maybe Lindsey Graham thinks that, she's a brown woman, so she has better, what we would call better politics than the straight old white guy, and I'm sure what he would call scarier ones. But it's one of those things if only that were the case, if only, in a similar way, if only Kamala and Biden were the socialist, black radicals. Abolitionist revolutionaries that Fox News claims that they are, right? But I think I agree. It was that's not a gotcha when you don't really have any moral compass that you have to either try to express or hide, or it's just not there.
So that was those were two of our more substantive clips, but let's get to what everyone wants to hear about.
Oh my God.
Those posts.
Your attacks were not just made against Republicans. They were vicious attacks made against progressives, people who I have worked with, me personally. So as you come before this committee to assume a very important role in the United States government, at a time when we need serious work on serious issues and not personal attacks on anybody, whether they're on the left or the right, can you reflect a little bit about some of your decisions and the personal statements that you have made in recent years?
Yes, Senator, I really appreciate that question, and I recognize that my language and my expressions on social media, caused hurt to people, and I feel badly about that.
You feel bad, first of all, not to give away my whole spiel on useful idiots, but that's supposed to actually be an adjective, not an adverb, but whatever. It's a hypercorrection. Everyone makes it.
No, she's bad at feeling.
That is true. No, she is, but that's not what she means. It's true, but she doesn't mean that.
I don't have any feelings. I'm just here to do a job.
Yeah.
and the thing is, that was the question. She's been had to know this. She knew this was coming. People have been talking about this in the news for like a week, that she's going to be asked about her mean tweets. And she doesn't even have like the base level apology ready. Like Joss Whedon made a better apology.
I was going to say, like West Wing, she could have just read some West Wing script.
You could literally, like, it's so easy to make a clear apology, but she does the thing where it says, I feel sorry for offending people, basically. I watched the full clip. It goes a bit longer than that, but she basically ended up at the place where I feel sorry if my words like hurt people or something, and people were asking, and I think she was asked, like, well, did you actually believe all this crap you said? And she kind of just had to gloss over it. And because I think this is just someone who maybe doesn't really have a ton of beliefs, really, and it's just like not that bright a person. Think anybody in this same position, like all of us aren't this wild on Twitter as she is, right? Like for the most part, like, and she knew, and she's someone who's already in power. She knew she shouldn't be doing this stuff. She knows she doesn't need to be on there at 3 a.m. yelling at Nathan or Katie or Bree, but she does it anyway. And it's the most endearing thing about her, but it's also the most disgusting thing about her
if she used her power for good instead of for evil, it would be endearing, and we'd be like, yay. But she's
like me.
Yeah, exactly. Like me or you, Bree. But I don't know if I think she is kind of smart in a specific way, and I think that actually what her not knowing or not her lack of restraint, I think, speaks to just a total entitlement and a lack of accountability that people who represent a certain political structure or political affiliation, group orientation, class, really, they just don't have to face.
A lot of her defenders were saying, well, she was called neoliberal. This woman is Kara Court, who's a CBS News climate and energy reporter, was tweeting about it, saying Tanden was not so affectionately referred to as a neoliberal by Sanders surrogate supporters. Like that justified her palling around with all of the miscreants that she pals around with on Twitter. Like neoliberal is a thing. It's a word with a definition that is accurately applied to a person with Neera Tanden's politics.
Which also speaks to how entitled, again, and how entitled these people are and coddled, because no one's been like, yeah, okay, that's an ideology. Do you not share that ideology? Or do you? It's just like, oh my God, that's a label was applied to me that I don't think is flattering. Wow. Like, I really feel for you, Neera Tanden.
Imagine
if
Bernie had asked, are you a neoliberal?
So, Neera, what do you think at the end of the day? Neoliberal? Yes or no? It's not, it's an easy question to answer.
But why should she give a sincere apology? She's not going to give... I think she understands full well that the left is not in power, that Bernie Sanders is one senator, and she has to at least, she has to pretend she doesn't hate him for 5 minutes, but she doesn't have to, she knows she's going to get confirmed. Her people are in power, so she gets to show that arrogance and contempt.
Well, some people are frustrated, watching Bernie in this setting, because there was this feeling when he got this position that, okay, there's a moment of retribution here. The power is in his hands. He could stand up for his campaign manager and for all of us who've endured so much from her. But what it feels like is this just is another moment where we all have to feel cowed and kind of cucked.
Yeah.
Because we all know that it's not going to happen. I mean, like, I hope I'm wrong. I hope when this
we
airs
should
tomorrow,
talk about
I'm
it like it's
completely wrong.
going to. Let's pretend. Let's like put out the good vibes.
But the feeling is, I think that, you know, if Bernie wants his people to be treated fairly in this process, he feels like he has to do this like tit for tat business. And so the rest of us, the masses, just end up feeling completely deflated.
Bernie should have asked her about the other deranged people that she posts with all the time.
Which ones?
You know, we could.
You have a
ask,
favorite? Smart Flexin, Eclectic Brother, Mr. Weeks.
God, all these geniuses, geniuses. Who's this Brooklyn Dad Defiant? One is he defying?
Well, we should go to the next clip then, because one senator did, or maybe several, read through a list of the things she has tweeted about, I think, all Republicans.
Just to mention a few of the thousands of negative public statements, you wrote that Susan Collins is, quote, the worst.
Correct.
That Tom Cotton is a fraud. That vampires have more heart than Ted Cruz.
Correct.
You called Leader McConnell Moscow Mitch and Voldemort.
Voldemort, okay.
This is a cool
So
thing.
yeah, I'll give her two of those. What did she say? Okay, vampires have more heart than Cruz. That's true. What was the first one? Fact. Snow is the worst. Fact. And
wait, I don't get the vampire. These vampires have hearts. They're not a creature without a heart.
What would the appropriate thing be? What would the appropriate thing be? Like hate garlic more than?
I don't know, some kind of automaton. I mean, I would like a golem has more heart than Ted Cruz.
Zombies don't have hearts.
Yeah, not working ones. Yeah, that's true.
Vampire sounds good, is the thing.
It does.
It doesn't actually work if you think about it. But
I think she was paying homage to Matt Taibbi, of course.
Right. Just listen to your episode.
Vampire Squid, Goldman Sachs line. Yeah.
We just have one more clip here.
And it wasn't just about Republicans. And I don't mind disagreements in policy. I think that's great. I love the dialectic. But the comments were personal. I mean, you call Senator Sanders everything but an ignorant slut.
That is not true.
I want the record to reflect that I did not call Senator Sanders an ignorant slut. Okay?
Thank you. I don't know how I should take that, Senator Kennedy, but...
And we talked about that on Useful Idiots, which will come out after this. So, yeah, I didn't know that was a Did you get that was a reference?
Yeah, to Saturday Night Live.
Okay, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. So I was like, wow, this guy's awesome. Then he's still awesome, but not quite as awesome. But yeah.
The worst part of I mean, obviously not the worst part of COVID, but it's really it's really unfair that mask stole Bernie Sanders' facial expression from us.